Hello, everyone, and welcome to Technology Tuesday, hosted by Out of the Box Technology. We are excited to bring you these free webinars that feature tips and tricks from in and outside of QuickBooks, hot topics our industry is encountering, and a lot of the things that are going on here at Out of the Box Technology. My name is Jennifer, and I will be your moderator today. I work in business development here at Out of the Box Technology, and it's an honor to host these sessions each and every Tuesday throughout the year. If you have any questions as the presentation is going on, please go ahead and chat those over to me, and I'll make sure that we get those answered with Barb as the session progresses, and we'll definitely have a question and answer time at the end. A little bit about Out of the Box Technology if you're not familiar with us. We are a QuickBooks training, integration, hosting, and support company. We have a whole team of consultants that are here at your service to provide this support, setup, and training in QuickBooks. We also have a team of bookkeepers that offer their great services, and a whole IT and development team that do website design, custom app development, data migrations, and more. One of the products that we are really proud to offer is Recur360, and I assume that is why you're all here today, because we are hosting another one of our quarterly updates. Now, Recur360 is an app that we developed just a couple of years ago, and it's really grown over those years. We've had a lot of customers come on board with us, and with those customers come some suggestions on ways that we can improve the app, make it more user-friendly, update the interface, all sorts of different things. And so we are coming every quarter with one of these Technology Tuesdays where one of our experts will be on the line to talk about what's new, and also just a brief overview on what Recur360 is in case you are new to the app. So with that, I'm going to introduce Barb Fiddler. She is one of our great team members here at Out of the Box who works closely with Recur360 and the whole team. So Barb, I will hand it over to you and you can get us started.
Hi, Jennifer. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and show my screen here. I always have to double check to make sure I'm showing the right screen. And I want to make sure that everyone is seeing my Recur360 account screen. Great.
Perfect.
Okay. So as Jennifer mentioned, we try to do these on a quarterly basis and let you know not only what the new features are that we've added in the meantime since the last update, but kind of some basics about what Recur360 can do for your business. So here at my login screen, if you've seen this before, you know that Recur360 has the ability to connect to more than one QuickBooks company file at a time. So I have two different scenarios here, one that is set up and connected to my QuickBooks desktop company file, and another that is connected to my QuickBooks Online file. We'll go ahead and log into the QuickBooks Desktop company for now and show you guys kind of what is new and a few of the features here, and then if we need to, we can switch back over to the other company very easily. Once you log into Recur360, one of the first things that you're going to see is our recurring invoices screen. We also have our second feature, which is our recurring payments option, which we'll talk about a little today too, and then our collection center. But let's get right into the details of what's new and what's been added since our last update. A lot of it has revolved around improving some of our integrations with payment options and credit card processing options, and then some also user configurable settings that let you control how and when Recur360 is going to do things for you. So in talking about those payment options, if you go to settings and go to payments within Recur360, we can connect to many different credit card processors. One of our own, which is Recur360 Payments, can get you a merchant account, but we can also go through Intuit, Stripe, Authorize.net, Elavon, or USA ePay. And two of the new features that we've added surrounding this have to do with USA ePay and Recur360 Payments. We do integrate to both of those platforms, and the new option that we added for that is for you to be able to do what is called a sync to those platforms. Now, neither one of these is connected for me. I have mine connected currently to Intuit Merchant Services. But if you were using either USA ePay or Recur360 Payments, there is an option for you to be able to synchronize information between the two platforms. And I'll show you what that is and what that means really quickly here. I'm going to actually go ahead and log into our real live Recur360 site here for a moment using our own login. So in our Recur360 account, we have ours connected to Recur360 payments. So if I go there and I go to settings under payments, when that screen comes up, it is going to show me, if I select my Recur360 payments, credit card processing, that I have the ability to synchronize information. I can either disable it or I can enable that is going to compare the customer display name to the USA ePay or Recur360 payments customer name. Or the other option is to compare the email field in Recur360 with the email address in the customer record. Now, what that means for you is if you're using USA ePay, you do have to be upgraded to their version 2 payments platform, which is going to look like this when you log in. So you're going to be able to see a dashboard and an area that enables customers. That must be enabled in your USA ePay or Recur360 payments account in order to be able to enable our sync. So if I go to that customers list here, I'm going to see all of my customer data with their credit card information. When we talk about their display name, we're going to match this here, this New Beginnings K9 LLC, would look for a match in Recur360. And if there is a credit card stored in USA ePay, it would copy that into my Recur360 account. Okay? And vice versa. If Recur360 adds a payment method, it is going to add that into the customer area in your USA ePay account. This is very helpful in keeping both of those synced together, especially if you have your USA ePay account connected to an outside system. If you have a shopping cart or another website that integrates or another way you add customer information into USA ePay, it would automatically download that information if it found a match into your Recur360 account then. So that would eliminate your need for entering credit card or ACH information on those sites and then putting it manually into Recur360 again as well. So both of those systems will update each other based on this sync. Now that enables the sync option for you. So when you want to go ahead and then update that data, once you've added something in Recur360 or added something in USA ePay, you just click this Sync Recur360 Payments button in your menu then. And now we'll update the two systems and synchronize them. So that is a new feature both for USA ePay and Recur360 Payments that we've just added. So I'll go ahead and close that out now as a new option. The other thing that I mentioned that is a new feature is a lot of our settings options and giving you the ability to personalize things. So in the settings menu under account now, we have an option in Recur360 to disable the automatic daily push. In its default mode, the way Recur360 works is every night at 3 a.m., it is going to check all of your recurring invoices in the system. And any that are queued to process on that day, it will create the invoice, process the payment if it's told to, and push the invoice and payment over to QuickBooks. If you would rather have control of when those things happen, you can disable the automatic push every night, and then the recurring invoices don't automatically generate. You would have to manually come into Recur360 whenever you decide to generate your invoices, and your recurring invoice will show the things that are queued. So your next period will show when those are going to happen. If I sort this, I have then my next one's to go on the 15th. If I log in on the 15th to Recur360 or any day after that, and I've disabled the automatic push, then in order to get the system to create any invoices at all, I have to press that push transactions button. Now, push transactions in Recur360's default method, if that disable option is not checked, is simply going to check for any invoices that you have either backdated or you created today and told to process today, and it's after 3 a.m. and it hasn't processed those. So me pressing push transactions right now, the way my system is set up with my next recurring date being 2/15, is not going to do anything or process any new invoices or payments right now. if I had set that disable setting and I told it on the morning of the 16th to push those transactions, then Recur360 would process these 2 recurring invoices and any payments that were linked to those to be processed. So it's a very nice tool if you want to have control over when invoices are going to get generated by our system and when they're going to get emailed to clients and payments are going to process. So it gives you a little bit more control over when that happens as opposed to it automatically doing it every morning at 3 a.m. Now, the disadvantage, obviously, is you can't set your recurring invoices and forget about them then and let them automatically process. You do have to manually, every time you want invoices to process, log into Recur360 and press your push transactions button. So just be aware if you contact us and let us know that your invoices haven't processed, this would be a setting that you need to check to see if you've disabled the nightly automatic push. Next new feature and new setting is also in our settings options and under our email settings. We have the ability now for you to choose whether you want the invoice links to show and whether you want them to be able to automatically check the option at the bottom of the invoice link that says you want to store their credit card information and keep it for future transactions. Right now, let me show you what that looks like. If I were to go to a customer and I were to click on their email link, so I'm just going to click it from here within the program instead of opening an email and clicking that link. That customer typically gets an area where they can pay their open invoices, pay parts of their open invoices, or simply update their payment details. If they don't check anything here and they enter a new credit card or a new debit card or new ACH information, typically it is automatically checked for this to store and automatically link to their future transactions. So if I go back to my Recur360 screen, back to my settings under emails there, if I uncheck this option here, then that box is no longer automatically checked by default. The option is still there, but it is off. And a customer would have to check that to say they wanted to store their information. Again, part of the design is that we'd like to automate things and like to have it automatically store that, and they press submit. When they do that, they get a reminder, if this is checked, that they are authorizing you to keep that card information and use it for future transactions. But we've had some requests from clients where they don't want that to be checked and they want the customer to have to go in and check that to store that. So that's a new feature in there as well for the invoice link settings. Okay. The next setting that's in here that's in the same area is for you to be able to choose some information on how the information goes out on your invoice emails. So on the left-hand area here, we have an option to check if you'd like to hide what are called the item name or item codes from your invoices. The invoices that get sent to clients have that Uber-style email where it gives the description of all the items that are on that invoice, and it also gives them the dollar amounts and the quantities. By default, it also shows the QuickBooks item name. So if I go back to one of my recurring invoices screens here, and I look at this particular one for Barb's Bike Shop, I have the item code, which is called service in this case, and then I have the description. So if I don't want to show this column on the email that goes out to the client, that's where I'd update that in my email settings. And that would remove that from any of the ones that go out of there. It's still going to show in your recurring invoices screen when you set it up, and that's still how you can search for and add parts, but it just does not go out in the email that's sent. Okay. Next invoice setting option is to be able to hide the sales tax line item on the email and the PDF if it is a $0 amount. Okay, so if you calculate taxes as a line item in QuickBooks instead of using their built-in sales tax calculation feature, you can have that automatically not show the sales tax in the bottom area. And where I'm referring to is, again, if I open my recurring invoices screen here and I go to Barb's Bike Shop and I go into recurring invoice setup, at the bottom, you have a sales tax line normally that would show. In this case, there is sales tax applying, so $9.38. So this one will always show. If I have a client who is not going to be charged sales tax, they're out of state, or the items that are on theirs don't have a sales tax amount. I'm trying to find a customer who doesn't have sales tax applying here. Okay. I've got all of my customers are taxable, which in a way is a good thing. So if I have a customer that's out of state and that is a 0 sales tax item, I can have it not show that sales tax line item then down there in the bottom. So this would be a good example of a customer who does not have a tax rate applied, and I don't want to show that on theirs. So if I go to my settings under emails here, and I check off that I want to remove that if it's 0 for that particular cash sale customer, they wouldn't have that sales tax area in their PDFs or their emails that go out to them. And another new setting in this email area as well is in the PDFs that get sent out to the clients. So right now, the PDF attachment that goes to a client looks something like this. So it's got your company information, your logo up here at the top, a bill to area, and a ship to area section. Then it has your invoice detail information, the invoice number, our Recur360 transaction ID, the customer's account number, invoice date, and things like that. So where I'm talking about being able to customize is this bill to and ship to section that goes out on this PDF. So back to our email settings here. If that area in your customer setup happens to be empty, if I did not ever enter a billing address in that section or a shipping address for that particular customer, then if I check these, it will still show the bill to section in the invoice PDF that gets attached. By default, if this address field is blank in Recur360, then the bill to section doesn't even show on the PDF that gets attached. So some of our clients still wanted to be able to show that customer's information, the customer's name and company name potentially, and a ship to customer name and bill to name again as well. So if you check these, then no matter what, even if the address block is empty, it will still show that bill to and ship to section on the attached PDF again, only affects that PDF attachment. So those are two new options in there. And while we're talking about this right now, I know we've had a lot of clients ask about it, but currently we don't allow for a lot of customization in this section of the PDF invoice attachment. It has been a feature request, but it's not something that's available to us right now. But we're giving you a little bit of customization in that area, just not full-blown being able to redesign what this template looks like. Okay. So that's another option that's in there in the settings. Let's see, what else didn't I talk about? A customer types field is another new feature that we've added into Recur360. For QuickBooks Desktop, you have customer types in QuickBooks that you can define. And we now bring those over into Recur360 as well as let you update and change those within Recur360. So if I have a customer here called Barb Test, and if I were to edit that customer within Recur360, if I scroll down on the left-hand side of the screen here, I'm going to see an area that's going to show me additional information, and there is a customer type field. So these come over from QuickBooks directly in the customer type. If you have different ways to organize and group your particular customers within QuickBooks, you know, have different wholesale customers versus retail customers, and you'd like to identify this as a wholesale customer, I can save and sync that information. That's going to queue that up to then post over to QuickBooks to update that customer's information. And if I go back to my customer list here, then I'm able to see customer type as a viewable field in the customer's area, and I can sort by that then I want to sort by it in reverse, so I want to see all my wholesale customers. So I've got 3 wholesale customers currently, 3 referrals, and 1 from advertisement. And so you have the ability to add that as an additional viewable and sortable and filterable field in Recur360 now. Okay. Let's see. I have a note here. I'll come back to that one in a second. Sorry, I want to stay with our settings and with our customized email settings and options that are in here before we get back to that. So the next option is a few of the screen updates and table updates as we just kind of got into. We've added that customer type here on the customers page. That is also available in the other screens as well. So in my recurring invoice screen, I'm also going to be able to see and sort by customer type, and my collection center I will be able to see and sort by our customer type as well. So that field has been added to all 3 of those screen areas. We also have added a beginning date to some of the reports. So in our report for our Recur360 invoice history, you now have the ability to input a range here. So if I want to look at my past invoices that Recur360 has created, it defaults to the previous month, but I can go back and say, no, I want to see the invoices from December of last year and stop it at the end of December last year. I can now search for all those and easily more kind of limit the things that show up on the screen here, or show a more expanded view, and again, download any of those to CSVs to do maybe some reporting. Maybe I want to see my revenue for the month of December. I can just put my December dates in there, download that as a CSV, do whatever I want with it in Excel. Okay. We also added the option for you for QuickBooks Online users to have customer notes. So let's switch companies now. I'm going to go over to my Sandbox company, which is connected to QuickBooks Online. And some of the differences for you there is my invoice history report here is now going to show anything in QuickBooks Online that you put in as a customer note. So if you have a note about this customer, let me see if I have anybody in here. I don't have any customer notes. That has a particular note in there. I can see that in here. If I edit the customer, I can also add notes in here. So let me go ahead and add one so you'll see. PayPal maybe. Okay, so I want that note to be visible on all of my reports. So if I press Save and Sync, that's going to update that into the notes field in QuickBooks Online. And then it's also going to make it available on my reports. So where that's going to show up in Recur360 is in my invoice history report, and also my invoice errors report, and my recurring invoices screen. So now if I go look at Susie's site, if I go look at her recurring invoice for her Alpharetta suite, I see that at the top of that screen when I edit that invoice. If I go to a report and do an invoice history report, and I were to happen to see that, it shows right here, as well as our invoice errors report. So go into another report here, any invoice errors that have happened. Hopefully I don't have too many. Oh, I do have some failures here. If I were to sort by customer notes here, Susie doesn't have any invoice errors, but that would show there as well. So another way for you to kind of put a specific note about that customer and have it show up in all the different areas of Recur360 so that everybody has access to it and can easily find that information, and I don't have to worry about how it gets communicated. Also in our QuickBooks Online users, QuickBooks Online has a feature called Location. You notice here I have a Florida store location for this particular recurring invoice, and that shows in my recurring invoices screen. That feature has also been added to our new report. It's not a new report, sorry, but our recurring invoice lines report. And the recurring invoice lines report is going to show you any line items that are on every recurring invoice currently in Recur360. So this is going to show you for this time period what line items you're going to invoice for. So this is the start of a projected revenue report for you. And this report, because I'm attached to QuickBooks Online, is going to show my location there as well. So I see that I have 15 entries or 15 things that are going to be invoiced during the period of 2/5 to 3/5. So kind of my February month invoicing. This is what I'm projected to be invoicing for. I can see the date that that invoice is going to happen, the customer, the actual line item, the quantity, and the dollar amount total. So that is another new column that has been added to that report, which is the location field. And again, only available to QuickBooks Online users. Okay. Then last, I'm going to backtrack a little bit, and I talked about some of our payment method syncs, and I can't believe I didn't cover this during our last quarterly update, but I guess it got added right after that quarterly update. Is the last one is an authorized.net sync, which this QuickBooks Online account in particular is connected under my payments processors to an authorized.net account. So if I were to go here and pick authorized.net as my payment processor, again, I have similar options in creating a sync to authorized.net. Again, if you've got another website that feeds into authorized.net as your gateway and feeds customer payment information into the SIM. So in authorized.net, they have what they call their customer information manager, or their SIM, that stores credit card information and payment information. I can sync with that information as well and update Recur360 based on changes in authorized.net, or update authorized.net based on changes in Recur360. So I again choose how I'm going to sync that information. I can base it on the display name field out of Recur360, matching the customer profile in authorized.net, or I can do it based off a sync to the email field. And again, I get an option new menu choice in my Recur360 screen that says I want to sync with my authorized.net information, and that would look for any changes between the two and update that information. Okay. So those are really, in a nutshell, all of our new features that have been released in the last quarter. Just a tease as far as what's upcoming and what's going to be released hopefully very shortly. I don't have dates on these, nor will we commit to an exact date, but we would be adding a ACH sync update for Intuit processing connected accounts. So if you're processing ACH payments through Intuit Merchant Services, one of the challenges with funding ACH payments is that initially the ACH payment is going to process through Recur360. As long as that is a valid bank routing and a valid banking account, when we process that recurring transaction to that ACH, we are going to get an authorization back. However, it can take up to 4 to 5 days, depending upon what credit card processing company you're going with and how they process their ACH transactions, for that transaction to actually get funded into your account and finalized. Because if that customer either disputes it or is there not sufficient money in that customer's account, those can be a couple of the causes for an ACH to not get funded. Then what happens is, from Intuit's perspective, they remove that money back out of your account, and that payment is no longer actually paid. So Recur360 is going to be able to, through Intuit Merchant Services, that's the only one that we're going to be able to do this through, be able to get the status of that funding and automatically delete or void the payment and send an email to the customer then to tell them that that was not funded and they need to give you a new payment. So that's one of the coming features that we're working on. We are also going to be adding, we have a lot of customers who are in a service-based industry, and in QuickBooks, especially QuickBooks Online and QuickBooks Desktop, you can put a service date. So let me launch my QuickBooks Desktop file here so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So if I log into QuickBooks Desktop, I can add a service date to my invoices and add that as a column. So we'll be adding that to where you can put in a service date and put that line item in the recurring invoice, and also be able to put it on emails that go out. Okay. Another new feature is going to be the ability to process a payment X days later, but no later than the end of the month on an invoice. I know that sounds kind of confusing, but what we've had people like to do is in our recurring invoices, I can set up this particular recurring invoice to process a payment either directly on the same day that the invoice gets created, or I want to process it 5 days after the invoice date. Well, if I want to process my invoice on the first of the month, but I'm basically giving this customer terms till the end of the month, and I don't want to actually remove his payment till the last day of the month, I could set this to remove his payment 31 days later. Currently, that is a hard 31 days after the invoice date. So in the case of the month of February is a good example. This invoice would run on February 1st, but wouldn't process until 31 days later. So it would not process until into March. But the new option is going to be a box to be able to say, but don't go after the end of the month. So in the case of February, even though this were set to 31 days, it would automatically process on February 28th because that is the end of the month the invoice was generated in. Okay. Also, and my QuickBooks file is opening over on my other screen, guys. I just have to give it a minute. It takes a little bit of time. Okay. And I'll get logged in and show you what I mean about the service date since we didn't really talk about that one. Another feature, again, talking about QuickBooks Desktop here. When Recur360 generates an invoice overnight automatically and we send that email to the client, it obviously has not pushed that invoice over into QuickBooks yet. So the first initial email that the client gets from you, if you tell it to automatically send the email with the invoice, is not going to have a QuickBooks invoice number on it. It will have a Recur360 transaction ID number on it, but not the QuickBooks invoice number because we haven't gotten that yet. So a new feature that we're going to be adding, which has been a request from multiple users here, is to have the system delay sending the email to the client until the invoice number has been assigned by QuickBooks. So in that case, you would have to make sure that the web connector was running and that the invoice had synced over to QuickBooks. So I'm going to go ahead and sync my invoices right now because I have a few things that are pending to go over there. If I go back to my QuickBooks file, I can see that there are 24 transactions still to post over. So with the new setting, it would wait until those transactions had posted over and gotten the invoice number assigned by QuickBooks, and then the email would go to the customer with the invoice number included in their email. Okay. So I'm going to let my web connector process things while we're talking, and let's go back and look at what I was talking about the service date. So in our Create Invoices option in QuickBooks, you have, and I don't know that I've enabled it in mine, but the ability to add a service date column and enter that service date when you enter a new line item. So I'd have to add that to my QuickBooks here. We'll cancel that. I want to add a service date here. It's going to load an online form. This might take a minute since I'm blowing up my QuickBooks there. So my web connector is still communicating things there. I'm at 47% complete. But it gives you the ability to, I didn't want to do a background. I have to enable my service options, guys, to put a service date, which is in my preferences, I believe. Sorry, guys, I'm kind of looking for this. I'll have to get back to it. I'm sorry. But those of you who use service date know that it gets added here on your invoice. When you're creating an invoice, you get to pick a service date as a column here as well. And we're going to add that feature to be able to have that same service date go into our Recur360 invoices so you can display that as well. And that would apply for both invoices that you sync in from QuickBooks or invoices that you create in Recur360. Hi. We talked about being able to send the invoices after the ID gets assigned by QuickBooks. And last new upcoming feature is the ability to have a different invoice date than the date that Recur360 generates the invoice. In QuickBooks currently, when you set up a memorized transaction, you have the ability to generate that memorized transaction in advance of the invoice date. And that was something we did not have in Recur360. So a new option that we're going to be adding for a future release is the ability for you to generate the invoice, let's say on the first of the month, and not actually put the invoice date until 5 days later, let's say. Let's say I want the invoice to show as an invoice date of the 5th, even though I'm going to generate it and send it to the client on the 1st. So you'll have some more flexibility in the date that shows up as the invoice date that gets posted into QuickBooks and shows on the customer email that goes out to them as well, and be able to kind of generate that in advance. A lot of our customers who are either a rental basis or a monthly fee basis want to be able to generate those invoices in advance of the actual invoice date. So that's going to be one of our other new coming features. Now, so that's really everything that's been added in the last 3 months into Recur360 and kind of a insight into what new things we're looking to add in the upcoming months. Some of the things I'd like to talk about and maybe touch on in Recur360 as far as if you're using or not using some of the advanced features that we have. We were originally built as being able to generate recurring invoices and process payments automatically for you on a schedule. We also have our collection center, which gives you guys some really nice collections automation features because I have the ability to select every open invoice in here, and with the click of one button, say I want to send everybody that's in my overdue list an email on, let's say, a schedule of send this out every X number of days. So if I click that option, so if I want to send it every 5 days beginning, every 5 days here, beginning how many days after the due date on the invoice. So maybe I'll give them 10 days grace period. But anybody that's past that, I want you to get a reminder email every 5 days. Once that's scheduled, you don't have to do anything in Recur360. That email is automatically going to go out and begin sending that to that customer until it gets paid or you cancel it. Okay. And the newest third area that we added to Recur360 is what we call our recurring payments. Now, as a concept, this gets a little confusing for some people because a recurring payment is different than a recurring invoice that automatically processes a payment. So if you're going to be generating an invoice with the payment automatically attached to it, that's done through the recurring invoices area. But a recurring payment in our system is meant to be more of either an internal financing payment plan or I have a customer who's way behind on a large invoice and they want to establish a payment plan on that existing invoice or on multiple invoices. So recurring payments for us, if you add one, you have two options in here. I have the ability for this particular customer, I set this recurring payment plan up to run every on the first day of each month for a 12-month payment plan until this $12,000 invoice is paid off. So if I go in here and look at this, When I edit this in Recur360, I see that it's for my Charlotte 1234 customer, that it is linked to this invoice in QuickBooks, which has a balance due of $12,512. I'm going to process a payment against that monthly, every 1 month on the first day of the month, beginning in this case March, until the invoice is fully paid. So it will end automatically when the balance is zero. I am going to charge this customer's card automatically. I'm going to charge this Visa card, and I will send them a payment email letting them know that a payment has been made. Okay. Now, this is going to charge $200 a month, so that's my amount that will be charged. And again, I don't have to do anything from there on. That is going to charge that customer $200 to his Visa on the first of every month and post a payment into QuickBooks against this invoice. So it'll be linked directly to that invoice in QuickBooks automatically. Once the invoice is paid, this recurring payment plan stops automatically. The next option in recurring payments is to be able to have I have a customer who has 10 different invoices open and they have a balance on all of them, and they've simply promised to send me $200 every 2 weeks until all of his invoices are paid off. So this Doug Beal customer in particular, I have this one set up that is linked to Doug's customer account if I were to edit this. So he's a customer. It is not linked to an invoice in QuickBooks. So this one processes every 1 week. I started it on 2/11. It's going to process every Monday, and it does not ever stop. So I would have to come in here and tell this to stop. Otherwise, every week I'm going to charge this customer's Visa card, how much? $50. Okay. In this particular setup, this is still going to process his payment for his Visa. If I choose to, automatically send him an email of the payment made, and is going to post a payment into QuickBooks, but it is not going to post it linked to any particular invoice. It will simply be an unapplied payment in QuickBooks on his account. Then I would have to go into QuickBooks for Doug Beal. Let's open Doug Beal's account here. So if I go to my customer list here in QuickBooks, I'm not able to open my customers here. There we go. And I go to Doug Beal's account. I'm going to be able to see there are some payments made. Here is a Visa payment that was made, and that is not linked to any particular invoice. So I would need to come in and link that to one of his open invoices. So here, if I go to that payment, I see that he does have an invoice that's open for $5. So I can automatically link it to that, and he has an overpayment. So in this case, even though he doesn't have a very large outstanding balance with me, I'm continuing in Recur360 to charge his credit card for $50 a week. So if he's fully paid up, I would then need to come to Recur360 and stop that recurring payment. So I could tell it to end today. Pick today's date. And then that would stop that and say that. And you have an option. You have the ability to delete this. I prefer to stop it on this date and press the submit button. That way it's not active anymore, but you have the record of it in his history. So I'm going to be able to go back and look at Doug's account here on his customer list and see that that was there. And see how that was running in Recur360. So if I look at his customer list here, there we go. I see that he had a recurring payment that was not linked to an invoice that was set to go, but it's not going to recur anymore. Okay. So that's kind of our newest feature that we just brought on board, is that recurring payments plan, to give you guys some more flexibility and options with processing a payment, either linked to an invoice or just a payment plan for an unapplied payment to an invoice. some of our reports we haven't covered a lot. We have our invoice history report in Recur360 that's going to show you every invoice that was ever generated in Recur360. And as I mentioned, the new feature to be able to filter the time frame on that, look at that, so you can kind of see where things have come from a date perspective. Also in here, one that I might have touched on before under reports is our email history report. This to me is a nice report because it shows what customers have been sent emails and the status of them. So I can see that this particular email was delivered to him. I can also see if I have any here that I've clicked on recently, if a customer has actually clicked on a link inside that email. So Barb's test got this email that got sent on 1/8, and the clicked option, if I look into the details of that, means not only was it delivered, she opened it on the 8th and she clicked on the pay online link inside of that email. So that's kind of your way of knowing if customers are actually looking at and receiving the things that you're sending them. This email history report is also going to be able to show you if any of your emails have bounced. So if you have maybe an invalid email address or a customer that says they're not getting your emails, you can look in here and see if any of them were bounced by their email system. So maybe you mistyped an email address or something like that. You can easily monitor and check anything that has bounced back to you and get a good idea to be able to send those back out to them. Okay. We talked about the invoice line items report here. Our payment history report is another one that's going to give you the history of every payment that we've processed from within Recur360 here. And again, there's a date on that one too. This is helpful if you are looking to match up maybe a batch report. So I want to look at everything that processed yesterday. I only had one. So this should match everything that went into my credit card transaction batch for that day. And an easy way, and you can download that into a CSV as well and do a direct comparison line by line then of the things that batched and or didn't batch. Okay. Then we also have our scheduled payments report. So that's going to show you anything that's in that recurring payments option, or sorry, not recurring payments, scheduled payments for Recur360 means in that case where you had set up your recurring invoice to automatically create an invoice on the 1st, but process the payment on the 5th. So the scheduled payments report is going to show you anything where, let's say I run this on the 4th, I would be able to see that, okay, here are all the payments that are still pending that are going to automatically process on the 5th. Now, when you schedule a payment to process after the invoice date, you have a couple of options. It is going to show up. Obviously, I can't show you one here. Let me see if I have anything pending in my sandbox company that I could show you. Yeah, I do have a couple. Good. So this is a good example here. So I have a particular one here for Barb's company that was created. The invoice number's already been generated, but the payment won't process until the 6th. So I can go into Recur360 and look at this invoice and see down at the bottom that there is a scheduled payment that's going to process his visa tomorrow. If this customer were to contact me ahead of time and ask me not to process that payment, I could come into the invoice here and cancel that payment. And then that would not automatically process his visa. He'd still have the open invoice that's got a balance due then of $150. And he could either pay it online, or I could send him another invoice, or he could give me another payment form. So that's where the scheduled payments report is going to be helpful for you, because you can see in one area all of the pending payments that haven't been processed yet and kind of manage them from there. You can also manage them from the invoice as well. If you were to know the invoice number, you could pull up the invoice and see it right here down at the bottom. Okay. And then the last report that we haven't talked about is our, invoice errors and cards expiring. So cards expiring is a report in Recur360 that shows you every credit card that you have saved in your system that is on a currently recurring transaction, but it has an expiration date. So this one expired in 7/2018. So I'm obviously not going to be able to expire or send a credit card transaction through to that expired card. So from the card's expiring report, I can send them an email. So I want to click off everybody here, and I want to really quickly send them an email to let them know that their cards are expiring and that they need to update their payment information. Now, in addition to this card's expiring report is a setting under your account to automatically send a notification like that out of the system 1 month prior to that card expiring. So if this is checked, not only will they automatically receive a notification, but you can always come back into that report of cards expiring and then see, okay, that email went out to them on that date. If they still haven't updated it, I can come and send them another email reminder that that card is still expired or expiring and they need to update that information. Okay. And then that last report that I haven't talked about yet is the invoice errors report. This is a report that's going to show you anytime that something failed when it generated either the recurring invoice into QuickBooks or the recurring payment or what happened there. So I have, as an example, here's that Bill's Windsurfing Shop customer. He had a payment that was supposed to process on 11/5 that never processed because the card was expired. So here's where I will be able to troubleshoot any of my things that have failed in one area again, and I can work down this list and go back and either click on Bob's windsurfing screen. If I hold down the control key, I can click on him. That opens his account in another window. I can go edit that, update his customer payment information, and I can see he's got a couple of cards with me, but they're both expired. So I would need to get new payment information from him and then either update it here. Oh, he does have another card here. So I can simply come in here and I can go, you know what, apply this new card that expires in 2020 to all of his current recurring transactions. And that's going to update that card information into all those. So in the future, I wouldn't have a problem with that card being expired and try to process. I would still need to go back into my main screen here and try to reprocess this card then and process it to that other payment form. So I could process it to this one, hit process payment, and that's going to clear that off now. So the invoice errors is an area where you guys kind of need to watch and come back and be aware of anything that failed. You need to take care of everything in that list. It gives you one area to do that from. So I think, Jennifer, that's really all the things that I had to cover today. We really talked about new features and some upcoming ones, and then some good practices for Recur360 as far as ways that you can use the software to help manage your collections and your recurring invoices.
Barb, thank you so much. That was really great. We appreciate it. We did have a couple of questions that were coming in as you were going over some of those features. So I'll go ahead and address those now. And if anyone on the line has questions as we're going through those, please feel free to type those over to us and we'll get to you as well. So our first one is from Michael, and he was asking, when a client gets their invoice, are they able to pay a different amount than the invoiced amount? For example, more or less than what the invoice is for?
They can pay less than what the invoice is for, Michael. They can't pay more than that. So when, as an example, let's go back to my Bill's Windsurfing Shop customer, and I'll open their pay online link. So they have a few invoices open with me. If I were to open his customer account, the invoice that he receives, by the way, always has a pay online link. So this is my easy way of getting to his pay online link. So if I click that right here, he sees his open invoices. He can pay all of this one or part of this one if he only wants to pay $200. He can change that amount, and he can pay multiple invoices as well. He can pay those two, and it will show him here right now, we're going to process your credit card for $285, and he can leave the other ones open. So he does have that option in the pay online link, yes.
Great, thank you. The next question is, you talked about the auto push and deactivating that or not, and mentioned that it auto pushes at 3 a.m. Is that in Eastern time, or what time zone is that 3 a.m. mark?
That is in Central Time.
Perfect. And is that something that you can adjust the time on, or is that set?
Not currently. Those all process at the same time. I know that we are talking about potentially staggering those as we bring more clients on board, but currently that is set by us and not something we can change.
Okay, great. The next question, will we be able to adjust the due date of the invoice? Currently, the invoice shows due net 30, not necessarily the end of the month. A February 1st invoice will be due March 2nd, for example.
That is always a challenge for us because we do calculate due date based off the terms that are established on a recurring invoice. So if I go into, as an example, one of my recurring invoices here, and I look at one of them for Barb's company, we always calculate the due date based on whatever the terms are set here. And these terms are defined in QuickBooks. So as you mentioned, if I have this set to net 30 on February 1st, then it is going to calculate March as a due date. The workaround that we have currently is to be able to have different terms established in QuickBooks, to maybe have one called due at end of month, and then each month in QuickBooks to edit that term and change the number of days that it calculates. So if I were to go to my lists under my customer and vendor profile lists, and I were to go to terms list, I would be able to edit, in this case, let's say my net 30 term. If I want to edit that, I could change that to, for the month of February, say 29. So this would be something that you would have to manage and edit in order for us to be able to change that. Because currently we are only able to work with things that are set as a term with net due in number of days.
Great, thank you. That addresses that perfectly. The next question is the delay for sending invoices to clients until the invoice number is assigned a choice, or will all invoices be delayed until the QuickBooks invoice number is in Recur360?
That new option will be a global setting for all recurring invoices then. So if you turn that on, then any invoice that gets generated out of Recur360 will not email to the client until the invoice number gets assigned by QuickBooks. So it will be one setting for all recurring invoices.
Okay, great. And then the last question we have for now is, where is the best place to see the total balance due for a customer if they have more than one invoice that needs to be paid?
Okay, that's a good question. Actually, in our customer center is probably the easiest place to do that, because right from this main screen, it will tell you their entire open balance right here in this column that says Recur Open Balance. So as an example, my Bill's Windsurfing Shop customer, I can see that their open balance on any invoices across the board is $1,097.60. And then I can see the detail of bill. If I click here, I'm going to be able to see which invoices he has that are overdue. Some of them may be partially paid, some of them may be fully paid. So as an example here, it's got this one that is due on this date and has not been paid. I can click the View All Open Invoices, and that will show me what invoices he has and what their balances are individually. So the main customer screen is where you see the overall view, and then the detail is when you click on that specific customer.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So those are all the questions that we have for now. Barb, if you had any last comments that you wanted to make before I take it back and close us out today.
No, I think that kind of covers everything.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Barb. We appreciate you going through those new features, as well as, like you said, just some high points to touch on that are really useful features for us. We appreciate that. I'm going to take the screen back and just show a little preview on what we have coming up for Technology Tuesdays in the next couple of weeks. Next week, we are welcoming our partners over at T-Sheets, and they're going to talk about unleashing the power of T-Sheets and how it integrates with QuickBooks Online. So if TSheets is a product that you're interested in, it's all about time tracking, really an excellent app. We hope you can join us. Again, all of these Technology Tuesdays are completely free, so feel free to join for as many as you would like. Invite your friends and colleagues. And we always have the live Q&A as you participated in today. We thank you so much for that. If you have any more questions about Recur360, you want to learn more, please feel free to reach out to us. You can connect with me, or you can connect with Barb directly, or you can jump on our live chat online, and someone's always there to handle any questions that you have. So we thank you again for joining us live today. This session is recorded, and you'll receive an email in a couple of hours with a link to the recording if you wanted to watch anything back. Again, we hope to see you again soon, and we wish everyone a great day.